Hello everyone, welcome to Talkin Baseball. We are at Season 6, Episode 6, and this is a special episode for everyone today.
So I'm Pete Lincoln, Jason Smith.
Hello.
And this is the 50th show we have done.
Can you believe it? 50.
Starting in 2015, and we've been on the air.
On the air for 5 years now, if you can believe it.
Years.
Yes, 6 years, you're right.
And
Season 6.
It seems a long time ago. Our first show, actually it was just Jason wasn't here.
Right.
I did an interview with Rich Letard. Rich Letard had written a book called That Glorious Season, and we interviewed him about that. And the second show, Deb and I did a talk on how to most enjoy Fenway, how to get there. And the first show that Jake and I did, Joe filmed in our cellar,
right,
where we talked about the best films of
baseball movies.
Baseball movies.
And we've been doing this ever since.
And we've had some really, if you have been regular fans of the show, we did a notable trip to Fenway where we just walked around and showed things going on, playing a game. We did two terrific shows with Gordon Eves, who then was the Red Sox historian in his office.
I think those might have been my two favorite shows we ever did. Those were
this year
so
we
much
did
fun.
A trip down to Mudville, which is kind of cute. And then we've done some special interviews, too. I remember one we did with Ron Chandler, who was the fantasy baseball expert, and one with George McLaughlin talking about old days in baseball and old baseball cards. That was great. Last couple of years, we've been doing continuous things. We took the top 5 position players all time.
All time, ever.
At each position,
ever.
And made that team up. And what we've been doing this year is taking the top Red Sox teams, splitting them in half from 01 to 1960, and from 1961 to 2000, which we will conclude today.
Finish
when
this
we get
up.
around to that part.
Every position and a left and right-handed pitcher, which is what we're going to get into today.
In 50 episodes, we've covered a lot of stuff.
It's a lot. And now, if any one of you have the complete collection of all 50, thank you for watching us.
Or even watch them.
Even watched all 50. We may be coming out with a box set. I'm not sure on that. We will have to dig in the archives to see if we actually have all 50. I think we do.
I do.
It is Christmas season, so if you do want a box set, I'm sure we can work that out for you.
We can arrange it. That's right.
We do give discounts, and we may even give an autograph or two or an interview, depending on how much you're interested.
And as usual, anything anybody would like to write in, and let us
of course
hear from you. We'd be glad to. Because,
of course.
This is a show to entertain you and for you to sometimes entertain us.
Yes, and it's the last show of 2020, if you can believe it. The days are short outside and getting shorter and for the next couple of weeks.
And this year's baseball season has concluded. They did get the season in.
They did. They
got
the whole thing in.
Peculiar way of doing it, but they got it in.
They got it in.
I don't think they're going to make enough asterisks to cover all the various awards.
No, it doesn't really count. But there is a full schedule on tap for 2021, and they're planning on going forward. Fans or not, well, that remains to be seen. But they do have, you can get the Red Sox schedule online for 2021.
Actually, the first game of next year is going to be played on April 1st against Baltimore at home.
At home. It's the second time in like 15 years they've been home.
I think the fact it's April Fool's Day might be appropriate in some ways, but we'll see how it goes.
There might still be snow on the ground, but we'll find. But it's very rare that they open at home now because of the cool weather, and so many teams are down south. They always open up in the dome.
And they're again playing just the East.
Just the East.
Just East and West.
Right, just the NL East.
We'll see how it goes anyway. So. Whether back to the paper dolls or not.
No, the cutout fans.
You know, I think I may have said before, I had a streak of 70 consecutive years going to Fenway, broken this year.
That's pretty amazing. Well, you weren't the only one. Nobody went this year. No. So maybe well, you get the asterisk on your record. You get. It'll be 71 with the asterisk next year.
I should have a hat with
asterisk hat. Right. It'll be like the Maris 61 asterisk. It'll be the same thing. That's all.
Well, an article came out shortly before the World Series. We usually don't knock baseball much or talk negative things about it, but there was an article by Dan Shaughnessy, who is regularly knocking things about baseball.
Knocking everything.
But what he had to say was, I think, pretty interesting enough, so we're going to talk about it for a while. The title of the article was, "Scrappy Rays Are Bad for Baseball." Here's a quote. I hate the Rays. I hate them because they are run by analytics guys. They play spreadsheet baseball. They love platooning, defensive shifts, and four-man outfields. The Rays invented the opener. That alone makes them loathing.
In other words, anything innovative.
Well,
right? That's what it is.
The problem with baseball has always been that there are so many players, you can't know them all.
Of course.
Even back in the days when I was following with 16 teams, I knew a lot of them. You can't know them all.
Of course.
So what do you follow? The stars.
The stars. And who brings in the TV ratings and the sponsorships?
The stars.
The stars.
So if you are a team that has no bankroll, has no financial background, you can't get stars.
Right. The Rays, we're talking about, they are not going to sign Mike Trout. They're not going to sign Chris Sale. They're not going to sign Mookie Betts.
They have the 28th highest payroll. So what do? We live in an age of analytics.
Yes.
What they do could not have been done in the 50s.
No, I would say even in the 90s it couldn't be done. And I would say that's a 21st century thing.
Measuring everything. Launch angles, speed of leaving, where every pitch is a strike or not, where every ball is hit, where it's hit to, how high it goes.
How many pitches pitchers go before they get tired, which was a controversy in the World Series.
What batters take the first strikes, to wait counts out. So what they're able to do is take this enormous quantity of analytics and use them to their advantage to get players who are mediocre to play better.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Yep, and one of the innovations they did, and he mentioned the opener. What the Rays did is that they had Snell and Morton, who were two big guys, but they didn't have any other starters. So what the Rays did, and they started doing this a couple of years ago, they stocked up on the middle relievers who go 2, maybe 3 innings once through the lineup, and are super cheap because nobody pays them. They pay the starters and they pay the closers. So the Rays sort of hoarded these 2-inning guys, and they just run through 4 or 5 of them per game. And it works for them because they exploited a market, they exploited a weakness that other teams weren't noticing, and that's to their advantage.
Now, if you want to have people interested in a league, there has to be some kind of parity.
Sure.
Like right now, people are following the National Football League East.
Yeah, the Giants are in first place.
Yeah, the Giants are in first place with a 4-7 record, but there's parity. Because they're all 4-7.
Right,
so it's interesting.
Right.
So ordinarily, 4-7 team, you wouldn't watch the game.
Now you're watching every week.
They might get in the playoffs.
Yep.
It's more interesting.
Right.
Because it's parity. That's a key word.
And it is. Parity is good. Football has proven that parity works when you're trying to keep a fan base.
The Rays are good for parity. They are good for small markets. They are good for truth, justice, and the American way, but they are bad for baseball.
I don't agree with that, to be perfectly honest with you.
They're bad for baseball for non-baseball fans.
That's what it is.
People tune in to watch. Where's this Mike Fish?
Mike Trout.
Mike Trout, yeah.
Yes.
He's good, isn't he?
Yes.
That kind of a
Mookie
fan.
Betts is good, isn't he? Right?
Is it Betts? Should we? Or is it bots? And it's that kind of fan that only will recognize a few stars.
Right. Like this was the Game 1 lineup that the Rays put out in the World Series. See how many of these names you recognize, because even as diehard fans, we didn't know some of these people. Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lowe, Randy Arozarena, Hunter Renfroe, Manuel Margot, Joey Wendell, Willie Adames, Kevin Kiermaier, and Mike Zunino. Not a star in the bunch, probably not even an all-star in the bunch, to be honest.
Or as Shaughnessy put it. And now Team Anonymous is in the World Series.
Team Anonymous.
Starring Nick Anderson, Pete Fairbanks, Austin Meadows, and Jerry Mathers as the Beaver. Good ball players all. Too bad they sound like characters in a sitcom.
Well, but you know what? Who was in the World Series this year? The Rays were in it, weren't they? So,
and he goes on, and this is where our point is trying to be made. The Rays had 12 different players record saves this year. Swell. Personally, I kind of liked it when I knew the name of the closer on the other team. It was fun to root against Rich Gossage or Mariano Rivera. How can fans summon any energy to care about Pete Fairbanks or Nick Anderson or is it Pete Anderson, Nick Fairbanks? So what does that exactly say? It says that you've got to have stars.
Yes.
You can't afford stars.
Right.
Right now, the Rays had a guy do tremendously during the playoffs, the World Series. How long do you think they'll keep him?
Oh, Rosarina?
Oh, yeah. Rosarina was he was the star of the playoffs.
He set records in the playoffs, and he's probably going to price himself out of Tampa Bay as soon as he becomes a free agent.
And you say a Rosarina, and so like the first time, I'll never forget when I heard the name of who was the catcher for the Giants. With a funny name.
Oh, Przinski?
No, the recent one, the catcher for the Giants.
Oh, Buster Posey. Buster Posey, yeah.
We were at the game the first
Buster
he
Posey.
played. Yeah. Who's the catcher?
Buster Posey. And now he's going to be Hall of Famer probably, so go figure.
So any name can be famous.
Of course it can.
Yastrzemski.
Yeah, Yastrzemski is famous,
you know?
sure. Yeah.
So it's not the fact that you just don't know the names, it's just that they haven't been heard enough, that's all.
And I think, and we're trying not to be too negative here, but I think a lot of this, too, comes from the fact that to follow the Rays or a team like that, you have to do your homework. And there are a lot of people in the press, perhaps maybe Shaughnessy, yes, Shaughnessy, who don't like to do their homework, to be perfectly honest with you. They like to promote the stars, and they like the big headlines. They like clickbait, to be honest, to put it in 21st century terms. They like clickbait. They don't want to pour through piles of stats like this to try to figure out platoons and things like that. It's the old school writers don't want to do this.
Some of you older fans remember Pete Gammons.
Yes.
Pete Gammons knew every minor league player.
Oh, he was ridiculous.
He would go to watch more minor league games than baseball, than major league games. But that's what you saw this summer. 1,000 faceless, nameless players, one after another, parading through Fenway Park. And now he's concerned because Bloom, who put this thing together, is with the Red Sox.
Putting the Red Sox together.
Bloom loves undrafted guys, journeymen, sleepers, hidden gems, and bargains. He appears to be on a mission to assemble a roster of no-names who can win.
Fine with me. Who can win?
I played a lot of baseball. I coached a lot of baseball. I cared about one thing.
Winning.
The W.
Absolutely.
All that matters.
And you know what? That's what the players care about, too. The players want to win. I mean, they get paid. It's a job. But at the end of the day, they want to win, too. So if stocking up on cheaper guys is going to help your team win, they don't have a problem with that. And the funny thing is, if the team is winning, well, in the Red Sox case, not in the Rays, they're sort of an exception, but I'd say with most teams, if the team is winning, the fans are going to go, I think. I think they're going to go.
Sure they will.
Now, on a national level, that's hard to promote if they don't have a star. But locally, people go when teams win. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
The only exception is Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay's the only exception, right?
They have one fan, Dick Vitale.
Right, they have Dickie V, and the guy behind the plate who used to yell at the players. That was about it. But I don't think it's bad for baseball at all. I think it's bad for the writers, which is a completely different thing, and I think that's what Shaughnessy is getting on about. I don't think it's bad for baseball at all. I think it's good. I like the analytics. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people do not. A lot of people look down on them. And do I think they go a little too far sometimes? Yes, I do. But in general, analytics has changed the way the game is.
And I think the people that are opposed to it are the older fans that don't understand it.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Just like I don't understand it.
100% agree.
But the kids that are used to analytics, figuring out that's their MO, see that something like a spray chart. I first heard the term spray chart, and I thought they were talking about a skunk. A spray chart simply means they figured out, they divided the field into 6 parts, and what percentage of batted balls that by a particular player go to each one of these 6. They take that all down, they analyze it, and they put it on a little card. They stick it in the player's hat. The guy pulls it out. He's most likely to hit the right center. Boom, over he goes. If there's 80% of the time he hits the ball in the air, 4 outfielders. 4 outfielders, yes. That makes sense. Right. Oh, well, the famous one recently was Poppy. How many times did they shift on Poppy? Because he was a dead pull hitter as a lefty. So they'd all go over to one side and have guys, the second baseman would be playing almost like a short fielder in softball in between the infield and the outfield. I mean, they always used to shift on Ted Williams and me. And I'll tell you why.
Yes, they
I was a lefty. I was a good hitter. And every time I came up from Little League through college and softball later, I would come up and the entire team would yell, "Lefty!"
Lefty! And they'd all go
over. I didn't hit the right field. I wasn't a power hitter. I hit the left. I always tried to hit it up the middle.
Do the Wade Boggs. Just slap it to
Automatically, if
left.
a lefty comes up, he's going to pull the ball. Where's that logic?
No, there isn't any.
You don't ever scream righty.
No, nobody ever screams righty. Even though there are more righty pull hitters than lefties.
Far
Nobody
more.
ever changes.
Far more.
Nobody ever changes it for that. So I don't think it's bad for baseball at all. I thought it was cool that the Rays are in the World Series myself. I like that. I like there are some really good stories, if you bother to unearth them, about guys who were on that team. They were sort of a driftwood team, assembled from cast-offs of other teams and minor leaguers that people didn't sign. I think it's great to see guys like that in the series.
I'll totally 100% agree with you. It's the media that wants the stars.
Absolutely.
You see when those teams that do, announcers that do games of the week come in, who do they talk about?
They talk about the stars.
The stars.
Oh,
That's all
absolutely.
they talk about.
All during the World Series, it was all Kershaw and Betts. And they create narratives, like there was the whole thing about, Kershaw broke his streak. Kershaw's pitched fine in the postseason in his career. It was just, that was a narrative they created because he was a star. It didn't make any sense.
Until the last game, Mookie had a very mediocre playoffs.
Yes, he did.
He was on TV 50% of the time.
Oh, and when he hit a homer, the announcers practically jumped out of the booth. Oh, my God, there he goes.
Any time when there was a lull in the game, they'd show Mookie.
Oh, absolutely.
Wherever he was, whatever he was doing, walking around, because that was he's a new player to the team.
And he's a superstar. Absolutely.
So,
and somebody like Cody Bellinger, who should be a superstar, they virtually ignored. He's actually
just let me read this last quote. The Dodgers have features the Rays lack. LA has a big payroll, star players, and continuity. The Dodgers have a lot of the same names in the lineup every year, while the Rays are about constant roster overhauls. Only 5 of Tampa's 2020 players were on the team in 2017.
That's amazing.
Tampa can't afford to keep its best players. Is this what we can expect with Bloom running the show in Boston? Ugh. Go Dodgers. Go Mookie. The innovative, soul-sucking, smarter than you are Rays will only move us one step closer to the death of baseball.
How dramatic can you be? I mean, come on.
Give me a break.
Oh, God. And especially, and I think that's increasingly irrelevant in the COVID days where we don't know what the free agent market or anything like that is going to bring in terms of superstars. The big money isn't there. The stars may not be there for the big money. Baseball's at a real uncertain point right now.
All sports are.
Every sport.
When are they going to start hockey up again?
Who knows? Who knows?
Is football going to be... Now they're Wednesday night football.
Yes, right. Yeah,
that was the first.
Right. Oh, and there were teams in basketball and hockey where they had to miss because somebody on the team got COVID, so they had to reschedule the game.
Reschedule the game, so you can't tell.
So,
in only thing I can say in his favor, and I think it's obviously because of COVID, the 2020 World Series TV ratings broke the all-time record for low. By a lot.
By a lot.
9.6 million viewers. That's 32% lower than any other World Series ever. I had friends that I know are baseball fans came up to me during the playoffs and said, "Is the World Series over yet?"
Right. Yep. Nobody watched. Nobody watched.
In 1980, 54 million watched the last game.
That's amazing.
As opposed to 9 this year.
That's amazing.
So I think just generally, sports fans' appetites have been decreased during COVID, partly because you can't go to any game at all yourself. So if you're a fan, you go to a game or two at Fenway.
It gets you excited.
And you can go and follow them. What are they going to do the next day?
Right.
Or you can take your kids, and the kids get interested.
Yeah, fans feel removed from the games right now because not only nobody's at the games, there's no one in the stands, which that's part of it too, is watching the people in the stands and getting all excited and everything. But if you can't go, it's hard to learn the game on your couch.
Right.
I mean, you have to go, no matter how much of a fan you are, you have to go and experience it at some point. And it's especially tough trying to get the kids into it right now because all the kids, they're all home right now. The last thing they want to do is spend 3 hours watching a game on TV.
And they can't go out
and play it. They can't learn it.
That's where you learn it.
So that's what's really so you're right on that. That's pretty troubling But not just baseball, all sports,
All
I think,
sports.
are in that boat.
That's right.
So,
Just one other fact that I still am having trouble with. During the 6 games of the World Series, there were 131 strikeouts.
that's
131 strikeouts.
it's a 3 true outcome game right now. It's a walk, a strikeout, or a home run.
And what
That's
the
all it
Dodgers
is.
were doing was bringing in 8 consecutive guys to throw 100 miles an hour.
It's amazing, isn't it?
So-
Every reliever throws 100.
So you're going to have a lot of strikeouts.
Of course you are.
And there's going to be a couple home runs.
Right.
But there's no strategy. There's never any tension with the bases loaded.
Oh, nobody chokes up anymore to go the other way with 2 strikes.
There's no
or
more
anything like-
Wade Boggs. There's no more Ty Cobbs.
No, everybody just wails away from the heels at every single pitch.
So let's hope that changes.
Right.
Okay. Time for trivia.
Oh, trivia time.
Again,
All right.
if you're just new to the show, for years now, we've been doing trivia questions. First, general to everyone, but since we have the Ken Jennings of baseball trivia sitting with us here, we've turned it to Stump Jason time.
Yeah.
Now, since
Okay.
we're going to be talking about pitchers
Okay.
in this next section, question is, what pitcher from 1901 to 2020 has the longest tenure with the Red Sox? Okay?
I'm 99% sure I know.
I'm afraid you do.
99%
Which
sure.
pitcher has the longest tenure, spent the most consecutive years with the
If
team?
it's who I'm thinking of, he was here forever. He was here a long time. So moving on, if you're just tuning in, what we did is this year we've started doing an all-time Red Sox team. We split it into 2. I take 1961 to 2020, and he takes 1901 to 1960. And we pick who we think the best player is at each position on the field. Now, we've done all the positions, including catcher, and this month is going to be left-handed starter versus right-hand starter. We cut out relievers because relievers are sort of irrelevant before 1960.
Now, left-handed-
so that's not really
Left-handed
fair.
and right-handers.
Left-handers
Both.
and right-handers,
That-
both.
yes.
Right, so we
So
split it to
you
lefties
can
and
lead
righties.
off, because I want mine to be a surprise.
Okay. All right, so my pick from 1961 to 2020 for the best Sox lefty pitcher, there really wasn't a lot of competition here. My pick was John Lester, who's still active.
right.
Was just with the Cubs last year. He's a free agent.
He's a free agent.
So maybe he'll come back to Boston. Who knows? Lester was incredibly consistent. That was what he had in his favor. He was an ace, don't get me wrong, but he was never going to win a Cy Young award. He was always gave you between like 15 and 18 wins every year, was durable as anything, always top 200 innings. He was 110 and 63 with the Sox. He had 2 World Series rings. A lot of strikeouts, 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings.
Right.
He made 3 All-Star teams, and this is how consistent he was. With the Red Sox, he was 110 and 63. With the Cubs, he was 77 and 44. His winning percentage in ERA with the Red Sox was .636 percentage and 3.64 ERA. With the Cubs, .636 percentage, 3.64 ERA.
That's impossible.
It absolutely is true. You can look it up. He had the same winning percentage and same ERA with both teams in his career.
Yeah.
And he was always excellent in the playoffs. He has a 2.51 ERA in the postseason. He always pitched well when the chips were down. When they needed a big start, I don't ever remember him getting bombed in a playoff start. I don't ever remember that happening to him. And, controversially, they traded him to Oakland, and then I think they kind of lowballed him, and he ended up signing with the Cubs instead. But he is, I think by far, he's the best lefty pitcher that you can say for the Sox of the last 60 years. I don't think there's anybody else even close.
I can remember when he first came to Boston, he came down with cancer and beat cancer.
Yes,
And
yeah.
then proceeded to throw a no-hitter.
Had a no-hitter, yes.
Hugging Terry Francona.
Oh, yeah. Francona said, I see him as my son. I mean,
right.
Francona loved Lester.
That was a beautiful moment at Fenway.
And in 2007, when he was just a rookie starting out, Francona let him start a game in the World Series, if you remember. He had that much faith in him, even when he was that young. Well, who knows? Maybe they can get him back for 1 year. It'd be kind of cool if he came back to end his career in Boston. We'll see. And he actually, if you look at his numbers, you can actually, I bet he'll get some Hall of Fame votes. I think he will. I mean, he's close to 200 wins, which is a lot nowadays.
We'll see how long he sustains.
Right, yeah, but he's my #1 pick by far for modern lefty.
Well, every time you look up any list of the best lefty in the early years, it's Lefty Grove.
Lefty
Always
Grove.
pick Lefty Grove. No. Not picking him.
All right.
The one with the most wins is Mel Parnell.
Yes.
Nope, not picking him.
Right.
I'm picking a guy who was Ohtani before Ohtani. Babe Ruth.
Ah, Babe Ruth. Yes.
Babe Ruth.
Great pick. Yes.
Was a phenomenal pitcher.
Yes, he was.
He was a terrific pitcher. In the years he pitched for the Red Sox, he was 94-46 with an ERA of 2.19. He started 143 games and completed 105, and only gave up 9 home runs in his entire time.
Oh my God.
In 1916, he was 23-12 with a 1.75 ERA, and he pitched 323 innings.
Those numbers sound fake nowadays, don't they?
But the reason I pick him is his postseason.
He was, yes, he had a record.
2 World Series in 1916 and 1918, pitched in 3 games, and he went 29 2/3 innings without allowing a run.
Imagine that.
A record that held until Whitey Ford broke it all those years later.
Yep.
It's just, he obviously was a better hitter, but he could have made the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And they made such a big deal about Ohtani.
Yeah,
Babe Ruth was the original.
Did it
Ohtani.
100 years ago. And if you're ever in Baltimore, right down the street from Camden Yards is the Babe Ruth Museum. A great visit. Absolutely one of the best places you can go to as a baseball fan.
And I have to add, Hall of Famer.
Yes, yes, Hall of Famer.
1930.
Right, and you're right. Everybody picks Lefty Grove, but when he went to the Red Sox, he was sort of at the tail end of his career. He was in his mid-30s when he came to the Sox. And
Lefty
he was,
Grove won 11 more games than Ruth, lost 15 more, and his ERA was 3.34 as opposed to 2.19.
Right, yep. So I think that's a great pick, Babe Ruth. I love that. That's awesome.
Okay.
So
how about righties?
All right, so moving on to mine somewhat might be somewhat controversial here for best right-handed pitcher of the Red Sox in the modern era. I did not pick Pedro Martinez. I picked Roger Clemens for several reasons. Clemens is the all-time winner of the Red Sox, 192 wins, tied with Cy Young for the most ever. He had a 3.06 ERA, a 1.44 ERA plus. He had 2,600 strikeouts with the Red Sox. Right. Imagine that. 38 shutouts, and he had a stretch where he led in shutouts 5 of 6 years. And he led the league in wins twice. He led the league in ERA 4 times. He won 3 Cy Youngs and was robbed of a 4th, which I'm going to get into. 1990, he went 21-6. That was the year Bob Welch decided to win 27 games. And back then, we were talking about analytics. Back then, it was all about wins. It wasn't about the whip and the K9 and everything. Bob Welch wasn't even the best pitcher on his team. That was Dave Stewart. But because he won 27 games, everybody gave him the Cy Young. And if you look at that, Clemens beat him in every other category that year.
Just as an aside, wins for starting pitcher now mean
nothing at all.
They don't let pitchers pitch 5 innings anymore.
So he won 3 Cy Young, should have won a 4th. And he actually won an MVP. 86, he's one of the few Cy Young and MVP winners. He came in 3rd another year. And, of course, historic, we've talked about it before. We were at his first 20 strikeout game in 1986, which is still probably my favorite game I've ever been to. It was absolutely electric to be there that night.
It was so amazing to be at a game, which was probably the 12,000th game ever played in the major leagues, and have something happen that no one else had ever seen.
Saw history. It's so cool.
It was like, I just had this warm...
Yeah, it was so cool to be there.
Cool,
and as the game was going on, you felt it more and more. The crowd was getting all into it. So I'm also going to do a little bit, this isn't too much of a tangent, I'm going to do a little bit of myth busting here about Roger Clemens too. Because the narrative that Dan Duquette threw out was Clemens was in the twilight of his career after 96 and let him go. False. 100% false. Okay.
Well, he went to Toronto.
He went to Toronto, right, exactly. So 1993, he had a bad year, but guess what? So did the Sox. The 93 team was probably one of the worst teams of the 60 years that I looked at. So after 93, don't forget, 94 and 95 were shortened seasons.
That's right.
So everybody points to he only went 40 and 39 in those 4 years. Well, guess what? Everybody's win total was down in 94 and 95. In 94, he was 1st in ERA plus, 1st in hits allowed, 2nd in ERA, 2nd in strikeouts, and he got 0 Cy Young votes because he went 9-7. Everyone was enamored with David Cohn, who had a good year, and he lost the ERA title to the no-name Steve Ontiveros, who qualified by one batter for the ERA title. Clemens actually beat him in adjusted ERA because he pitched in Oakland. 94, he easily could have won another Cy Young, too. 95, he was injured to start the year, but this is what happened. He had a high ERA at 95, but if you look at the stats, in July, he had 2 starts in a row where he allowed, 16 runs in 5 1/3 innings in 2 straight starts. I don't know if he had the flu or a sore arm or something like that. If you take those 2 starts out, he was 4th in the league in ERA.
You convinced me.
Yeah. So those 2 starts completely skewed his numbers. And then 96, of course, he had his second 20 strikeout game. He led in strikeouts. And listen to this. He went 10-13. He had 6 starts where he went 7 innings, gave up 2 runs or fewer, and didn't get the win. That's not his fault. So 93 through 96, his adjusted ERA was better just in those 4 years than it was in his whole Yankee career.
That's right.
So he was nonsense. He was in the twilight of his career. So that's a little myth busting right there. You look beyond the win-loss record, as we say. Clemens was as good as he ever was in those seasons.
I think the people that picked Pedro picked him because he had 2 or 3 of the greatest seasons anyone's ever had, ever.
Yes.
And they picked him by his personality.
Absolutely. Clemens was
such a more likable guy.
Right. Yep.
He didn't end up going, he went into the Mets, who cared?
Right.
He didn't go to the Yankees.
Right.
And
Clemens was never Mr. Personality with the team or anything
he
like
was
that.
the suspicion of
and the steroid,
drugs.
and the steroid thing hangs over Clemens' head. But Pedro only had 7 years with the Red Sox. Clemens had 13, and to me that's huge. That was a huge factor for that. So, Rocket, you're the greatest.
Okay, well, my pick's going to match you for wins.
You picked Cy Young.
I picked Cy Young.
All right.
How can you not pick Cy Young? It's just, everybody talks about him, but doesn't know much about him because his first several years were before 1901 when the 2 leagues began.
Yes.
And they sort of don't count those years.
Yes.
Even though there's some great players back then, they don't count them. But his record with Boston in 8 seasons was 108 seasons now.
8 seasons.
192 wins, 112 losses, and earned run average for those years was 2.
That's amazing.
2 even.
That's amazing.
And let me just read you. I'm not big on reading tons of stats. Just listen to these stats. In 1901, that's the first year the Red Sox existed, he was 33-10. His ERA was 1.62, and he pitched 371 innings. In 1902, 32-11, 384 innings. And 1903, when they won the pennant for the first time, 28-9, 341 innings.
Imagine 380 innings in a season now.
In the World Series in 1903, he was 2-1, 3 complete games, 34 innings, because 1 game went 16 innings.
Right, yes.
185 ERA and 17 Ks.
Yep,
He led the league in Ks. He had, speaking of control, because in those days a ton of Ks didn't really exist.
Right.
With the Red Sox, 1,341 Ks, 299 walks.
I can imagine 299 walks.
14 times he had the fewest walks for a starter.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And he had 219 as a batter.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's a better hitter than some of the current Sox.
I mean, overall, he won 500 games. Everybody knows his overall series. But just the years with the Sox, in their formative years, when they had other guys like Dineen that were good pitchers, he just had an amazing career.
Towered over everybody. And he has, a lot of his records are just completely unbreakable nowadays. No one's ever going to come close to those games. I think the all-time missed opportunity was, if we think we talked about it before, 1903, the Giants refused to play the World Series because they thought the American League was inferior. That World Series would have been Game 1, Cy Young versus Christy Mathewson. Imagine if that had happened. What a lifetime chance that would be to see.
I don't know if everyone knows his real name was Denton True Young.
Yes.
And he was called Cy because they said he threw like a cyclone.
Right.
That's his name.
Which back then was, you couldn't throw that hard.
Denton Young doesn't have quite the same
Cy
pizzazz to it. And here's something else that's always kind of bothered me. He, of course, is in the Hall of Fame, as all my team is. Yes. Only 76% of the voters voted for him. How can you not vote the all-time
all-time wins leader and
Wins leader,
all-time
everything.
Oh,
That means 25% of the voters didn't think he deserved to be in the Hall of
that's
Fame.
ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Just ridiculous.
So,
So
that concludes
there's
our Red
team,
Sox
and
team.
here's our certificate coming up
Yes.
here. The shows our two picks for the two All-Star teams.
This is our all-time Red Sox
All-time.
teams.
So let's match.
All right.
At first base, Fox versus Vaughn. Who would you say is
Fox
better?
takes it.
Dorr versus Pedroia.
I'd probably Dorr takes it.
That's close to
That-
even.
that is. I would say
Except
I'd
that
give-
Dorr played a long time.
He did. Yeah.
Cronin versus Garcia Parra.
Well, again, Cronin, at his peak, Nomar was better, but Cronin had way longer a career.
Yeah, I think
So-
if I was picking either one at their height, I'd take
Well,
Nomar.
at the peak, I'd pick Nomar, yes.
Collins versus Boggs, hard to tell.
Yeah, that's
Collins played
really- really close.
But Boggs was just phenomenal.
Right.
I'm going to go with him.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to beat Ted
No,
Williams.
Ted wins.
Speaker and Lynn?
beats Speaker by a mile.
Probably.
Yeah.
Hooper and Evans, I'd take Evans.
I would take Evans, too, yes.
How can you go against Babe Ruth and Cy Young?
Right, yeah, you can't really
But you
top
definitely
that.
have the better
I had
catcher.
yes, Veritek is better than Rick
So they make a
Merrill.
pretty good team playing against
I
each
would
other.
say, I'd
Yeah.
be curious to put that in Stratomatic land
Yeah,
and see
that's
how
right.
that comes out.
That's what we've determined are the two best eras Red Sox teams.
And what's amazing is that this is how good some of the positions are. Jim Rice did not make our team.
That's right.
So
Oh,
go figure that one
right.
out. So,
Yeah, there were several good
There were
players.
several very good pitchers who did not make the cut.
That's right.
So agree, disagree, let us know. Let us know what you think. We're curious to see how you would rank certain pitchers.
I just
and-
noticed on your Facebook the thing that you do about the picking teams.
Yes.
On your website.
Yes.
They did that recently.
Yes,
Picked the
they
best
did.
Red Sox team.
Yes, they did.
And it was so funny because almost all of them picked people since 1960.
Oh, of course they did, because nobody knows about the old
You know,
players.
Harry Hooper.
Who's Harry Hooper?
He was somebody
Jeez.
that invented whooping cough.
Yeah,
you know?
right. And they all picked Ted Williams because of the legend, and he's Ted Williams, but he'd be the only one from before 1960. So. But, yeah, I think that'd be good. Put that in Stratomatic land.
So that's been our season show this year, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you took issue with it.
Yes.
And maybe started some discussions of yourself.
Yes,
Okay?
absolutely.
If you don't like Harry Hooper, who would you
Right,
pick?
right, and
You know?
especially some of those early players are definitely worth seeking out. There's
That's
some
right.
great stories. They're incredibly talented ball players. I know it was a different era that's sort of irrelevant to today.
I'd like to pump a book about that. There's
Oh,
a book
yeah.
called The Glory of Their Time.
Oh, absolutely,
Which
one of the
was-
best ones ever written.
Which was a
Oh.
book written by a guy about first-hand accounts of players that played back in the old days.
It's
He's able to find guys
fantastic.
who were still around in the 1960s and talk to them, and those stories are
Oh,
great.
I remember the oldest one I think that he interviewed was Rube Marquard,
Yep.
who had a streak of consecutive wins, and he talked about how they used to hop the trains in between going to games and stuff like that. That's how they
You
got
gotta remember
around.
back then, players didn't make any money.
No.
This being a ball player was not a noble profession.
No, it was looked down on.
You didn't have a house next to Tom Brady.
No.
And all of them worked in the off season. A tremendous number of them were Irish, Irish immigrants, and there was something they could do to make some money other than just as day laborers.
Right.
And they were tough, fighting.
Yeah, these were not
Tough guys.
college-educated guys. They were rough
In
and
fact,
tumble
when,
guys.
when Lou Gehrig graduated from Columbia, they called him college boy for a while
Right.
until he hit 400.
Right,
You know?
and they didn't have the rights that today's ball players do. You were at the behest of the owners who paid
Right.
you, and there was a lot of gambling and fighting and stuff like that.
And
but
the equipment you played with was elementary. The fields were in miserable
Right.
condition. The crowds, but you know what? The crowds were just as big then.
yes, they were.
That people-
Everybody went.
especially in the 1920s. Baseball couldn't hold people in the stands. They put them in the field.
Oh yeah, there's all pictures of old Fenway.
tremendously
yeah.
popular because there was no football, basketball, or hockey then.
But yes, definitely seek out the glory of their times. It's a phenomenal baseball
Great book.
Phenomenal.
So, trivia answer. I
Okay.
figured I wouldn't even bother to ask this at first because my wife got it right away. But since we're talking about pitchers, I figured, what the heck, this is a good question. Who has the longest tenure in 120 years with the Red Sox?
I am 99% sure it's Tim Wakefield.
Well, you're 100% right. Once again.
There he is,
There
Tim
he
Wakefield.
is.
Now, I think before him, I think Clemens had the most. And I think he broke, it was either Clemens or Stanley, or they might have been tied. And he broke their record. And I remember for a long time, this was an example of how bad the Sox pitching was historically. For a long time, it was Ike DeLocke who had the most tenure, and he was just sort of a mediocre guy, but he was the longest tenured Red Sox until Stanley, I think, wasn't he?
Here's a little trivia.
Yeah.
He is still alive. He's the 8th living oldest ex-ball player.
Is he really?
He lives down in Florida.
Is he really?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember they always used to say, when they had the box scores in the paper, they always have a little cute caption on it. They always would say, the keys in DeLocke.
The keys in DeLocke.
Keys in DeLocke. Ike DeLocke.
But,
his real name was Ivan.
Well, Tim Wakefield won exactly 200 games in the major leagues. But he's, how many times did they roll that guy out to pitch? Always.
I'll be honest. I was never a fan because it's a gimmick pitch that he throws. And he was able to do that without any wear and tear on his body.
Right. He was 45 when he retired, I think.
And he never got all those, like Hoyt Wilhelm, those guys that can throw knuckleballs. It's just like playing pass practically. So they never break down. They never get taught. You never heard of a knuckleball Tommy John problem guy. But he had a couple seasons. I think he won 17 for him one year.
Yeah, he did.
And one year he was a closer. One year did pretty well. They always just seemed to be around as the 4th or 5th starter.
Always.
And now when I see his picture, all I can look at is Aaron Boone.
Yeah, oh no.
And it's interesting because he gave up that home run that was so devastating to us after we lost the Pedro game there. But nobody blamed him the way they blamed Buckner.
And actually, he would have been the MVP of that series if the Sox had won. He was fantastic that series. He bailed them out. And, Wakefield, like any knuckleballer, he had 3 or 4 starts a game where he would just absolutely get destroyed. And then he'd have 4 or 5 games where he looked phenomenal.
He gave a lot of home runs up.
Yeah, right.
When a knuckleball doesn't knuckle, you could hit.
I could exactly.
We went to a game in Detroit. I never will forget this. He pitched a complete game. The Sox won 10-7. He gave up 6 solo homers.
Yes, he did. He pitched a whole game.
He pitched a complete game. Didn't throw a lot of pitches. And just every other inning, someone would hit one to Cleveland.
Yeah, right. But so it goes with knuckleballers. So, all those guys, Phil Niekro and you said Hoyt Wilhelm and all those guys just hung on forever. So, so Wakefield is the answer.
He's
amazing to believe. Amazing to hear.
We've managed to meet him a few times. Very nice guy. Excellent guitar player.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And very, very clever with the fans. He's done a lot of broadcasting.
A lot of Nesson stuff,
He's very bright, articulate guy. It's just that thing comes floating in once in a while.
When he was off, boy, it got ugly. It really
did. Can you tell me what team he started with?
Oh, Pirates.
Good for you.
Pirates.
I can't stop this guy.
He should have been MVP in one of their playoff series too. If they had hung on in that game where the Braves got the hit in the 9th inning, he would have been the MVP of that series too. So.
Yeah, he's I think 3rd in all-time Red Sox wins.
I think because
he ended up with 200 wins, but he had I think 14 or 15.
Yeah, he had several with the Pirates.
Just 2 years he was there. Yeah. Okay. So trivia answer is that. Now,
how to preface?
I don't know if a lot of you people watch baseball with the care that we do, but we are of the impression umpiring has gone downhill in the last few years, almost drastically.
It's almost comical, actually, I think.
And what bails the umpires out is instant replay. So it doesn't matter what you call anymore. You call the guy out at first and you weren't looking.
Then the other team challenges.
You were talking to the first baseman and you missed the call. The other team challenges. They reverse the call.
Right. And if you're wrong, the other team still can challenge. The other team doesn't lose the challenge. So what do you get to lose?
So the umpires, one game we were watching, in 1 inning there were 3 calls wrong by the same guy.
And they corrected all
3 of them. So they've done some statistics on it, which we're able to find.
This is really amazing.
And someone took a long time, but in 1918, they charted 4 million pitches.
2018, not 1918. Let's go.
Did I say 1918?
Yes, you said 1918
you
have Babe Ruth on your mind.
No, I had Spanish flu then.
Oh,
that's what that was.
In 2018.
Early COVID. And so 2018, they checked 4 million pitches and found the umpires missed 34,294 calls. Let me say that again. 34,294 bad calls. That's 14 per game, or 1.6 every inning.
That's pretty amazing to think about.
Now,
34,000 missed
on.
calls. I think it's not only that they're bad, I think the technology is there to point out how bad they are, too.
That's the
I mean,
trouble.
umps have always been shaky. Some umps have always been terrible, but now the technology is there to say, you missed a call, you messed up.
I mean, before television,
Oh, yeah, who cares?
you
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
see. You couldn't
Right,
tell.
who
They
knew?
didn't have the cute little box there.
No, not at
what
all.
What does Jerry call it?
Oh,
I forget.
I forget.
He has a name for it that
Yeah.
he calls it.
He-
But anyway, now you can see with the box, you can see if the ball misses or not. They never used to have that. And so it's really hard to rate the umpires in the
Right.
old days.
Right.
And it was rough and tough anyway. The reason Babe Ruth's replacement pitched a perfect game is that Babe Ruth had walked up after the
Yeah.
first pitch, punched the umpire in the face, and bounced out of the game. If they did that now, he would just be sent to
He'd be
Siberia.
gone forever.
And quartering.
So and what was really interesting, and I can kind of back this up anecdotally, the less experienced and the younger umps actually outperformed the veterans,
Yep.
which I'm not surprised at that, because I think the younger umps have learned their craft with the technology, and I think they have learned to adapt to the pace of today's game, where it's all walks and strikeouts and homers. The game's very different than when Joe West came up.
Right.
So I'm not surprised by that at all.
I think I'm going to make a little prediction here. I've done this before, like they weren't going to hire Cora.
Yeah, we were wrong on that one.
I think it's not going to be too long before they're going to have what they call robo-umps. That doesn't
yes.
mean now a robot umpiring.
Right.
It means the umpire will wear a headgear, and there will be a machine behind him
Yep.
that with lasers can tell
tells-
whether the ball was in
Absolutely.
the strike zone or not, and he can hear that, maybe just make a sound. If it's a little buzz, it's a strike.
Right.
If it's not, and he can override it if a ball,
Right.
say, bounces
Right,
through
yes,
it.
right.
He can override it.
Right.
But that way, every single call would be made accurately.
Yeah, they already do that on the Fox thing. They have the little K zone, and it goes sideways.
That's right.
And you see where the ball went through the strike zone.
But this way, they actually would be talking to the umpire. Why not? What's wrong with that?
Oh, the umpires union probably is the biggest holdup on that, but I'm all for that. I'm sorry, get the call right.
Instant replay. They don't do instant replays at balls and strikes.
Right.
But instant replays anywhere hold up
Of
the
course
damn
they do.
game.
Of course they do.
You know, trying to make games shorter.
Right.
And if they have to have three guys going, the little lady comes out.
And
they put
comes
on
up with a little
earphones,
bag, and they put-
have
yeah.
conferences.
And New York goes and
everybody
says,
stands
"You messed
around.
up."
And some of
Yeah.
the guys are out in the field. So
Right. It's not speeding up the game.
They do that in every sport now.
Right, right.
It certainly doesn't help. Here's an interesting thing. They found that umpires demonstrated a two-strike bias, pitcher over batter. If the call
yeah.
is a bad call with two strikes, they're more likely to favor the pitcher.
That's very interesting. That really is.
2018 two-strike error count, 21.5%.
Wow.
1 out of 5
Wow.
calls with two strikes were incorrect.
Incorrect. That's a lot. That's a
One,
lot.
you can see so many times, and you can't argue
You
with
can't
them.
argue, but how many
You can't-
times?
And you can't replay it, but how many times you see the guy just back off and
So you
go,
go, what was that?
Or break the bats over the
Right,
knees,
yeah,
or
right.
get thrown out of the game.
Right. It's just-
But that's,
Oh,
that's a scary stat.
That really, yeah, it really, and especially with all the strikeouts in today's game, that's significant. I mean, that's really a lot. So interestingly, too, there were some blind spots, and they were more blind up, which was really interesting. I think it might be the angle that the ump has to kind of lean down, maybe.
Yeah.
I think the umps traditionally have always favored a lower strike zone. I think that's just the nature of the beast with that. But they missed 27% of the calls up in the zone, and the bottom right they missed 18%. And keep in mind, the catcher is obscuring part of their view too. I mean, if it's a strike down here and you can't see it, or if it's a ball, the catcher goes like this, you can't see it, you're going to call it a strike. But I think, again, robo-umping prevents that, because robo-umping has a dead-on pure view of the strike zone rather than behind the catcher at an angle.
There's something else I've been thinking about, too. When I was a kid, there were only National League umps and American
Right.
League umps,
Right.
and there were only 8 teams. That means
Right.
there were only 4 sets of umpire in a league.
Right.
So you got to see the same umpires over
Absolutely.
and over and over again.
Absolutely.
Now, any individual has biases.
Oh, sure.
He's going to tend to call the balls high
Right.
or low, but you would know that.
You'd know that
so
ahead of
you
time.
know that Honachek is going to call him high and
Right.
Bill Summers low.
Right.
And
Right. Mhm.
you knew the names of all the umpires.
Of course you did.
In
Of course you did.
1955,
Of course you did.
Fleer put out a set that included the umpires
Right.
in it.
Right.
I collected them all.
Right.
And so you knew who they were.
Right.
And I think that also that the umpires had a better sense of the batters.
I
So
agree.
instead of just always calling bad things on rookies,
I agree.
they would give a break to the guys that they knew.
Right.
Or if Ted Williams didn't swing, that
Right.
meant it was not.
It was not a strike. Mr. Williams will let you know
But
when it's a
now
strike.
there are 99 umpires total, and so you're likely to see a guy maybe once or twice.
Right. Right.
And so you don't know his tendency.
Right.
He doesn't know yours, and I think that accounts for a lot of these bad stats.
I think so too. And guess what? If you see a guy once a year, and we're human, we all have bad nights.
Yeah.
You see the guy on a bad night, well, then the next time you see him, you're not going to have any idea of what he does, what his tendencies are. And so, yeah, you're right. I think that's a big factor.
Here's some more stats.
This is
In
scary.
2018, I said 2000.
2018.
2018, 55 games ended with incorrect calls. The last call, the end of the game, was a bad
What's
call.
wrong? What's the
55 games.
probably a wide strike or something like that, or
Whatever.
something.
A bad call.
It's amazing to think about. Isn't it?
That's,
55
that's,
games.
that's scary.
That really is.
There's that many off.
So there were also 1,300 replays. Half of them, 643 of them, were overturned. So half the time they they challenged a call, it was overturned.
That was 2015, the Denver Post
You're right.
did a
Yes.
study.
Right.
Did a study of all the replays.
Yep.
And there were a total, as Jason just said, of 1,300 of them.
643.
And half of them were overturned. That means of the protests,
Half were right.
I'll bet, you know something, I'll bet in football is more than that.
Oh, I bet it is too.
But
I
that's
bet it is too.
different because, you know, whether the guy's toe was just barely dragging,
right.
whether the ball just
Right.
barely hit the ground, those are the kind of things the human eye can't really
Oh,
see
of
very
course. Oh,
well.
absolutely.
But you can
Yeah.
see a ball or a strike when
Right.
you're standing there looking over the
Right.
guy's
You
shoulder.
can tell if the ball got to first base before the runner did.
right.
You know, yeah, you're right. Breaking the plane in football is tough when there's 20 guys all piling on each other. You know, a call at first base is a little different.
And a lot of times they don't overturn the call because they can't tell.
Right. So
Doesn't show.
And even then, sometimes if it's a close call and it looks right, the other team will say, you let it go.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
we don't want to risk our challenge.
gonna throw the
Yeah,
red
we're not going to
flag.
throw the red flag, or they already had their challenge turned down, and
Right.
they can't protest
They don't have
it
it
too.
anymore.
So, well, this comes as no surprise to anyone who's watched the show. The players voted on the 5 worst umpires in the major leagues.
Imagine that.
They've actually voted on the worst 5, and if you've watched the show before, you will know who the worst umpire is voted by the players. Angel Hernandez. Big surprise on that one. Angel Hernandez is renowned through baseball as being the absolute worst umpire, and I think it's partly his attitude, because I think players can live with umpires making a bad call if they own up to it, or if they say, hey, I missed it. Angel Hernandez is the most arrogant umpire on the planet. He's never wrong. He's very combative with the players, too. He gets in their faces.
And he's very sensitive to the fact that he's a Latin.
Yes, yeah.
A couple of times he hasn't been chosen to be the umpire in the All-Star game, and he's sued.
He filed a lawsuit.
A lawsuit against them because they're picking on him. Let's just face it, he sucks.
He's terrible. He's really
that's the
terrible.
problem.
He's
But you
really
can't
terrible.
get rid of him.
Right. He's unionized, and you can't get.
So give us the other one.
And number 2, no surprise here, is C.B. Buckner. He's known as a good guy but a bad umpire, so he doesn't quite have the reputation of Angel. Now, the 3rd worst, we've talked about him too. Cowboy Joe West was voted the 3rd worst, and I think it's because not so much he's a bad umpire, he has a quick hook.
Yeah.
He has no tolerance for nonsense on the field. Actually, this coming season, he will become the most tenured umpire ever, I think.
Yep, beats Bill Clemens.
38 years or something
I don't
like
think
that.
they dislike him. I think he's just been around so damn
He's
long.
right. He was around when I was a kid.
I mean, sooner or later, every umpire's going to piss somebody off.
Right. Yeah, so Country Joe was third. And then Marty Foster and Bob Davidson, they don't even stand out to me.
No,
I couldn't even tell you who they are. But there was one umpire, and again, I don't know this one. Ben May had 13 calls challenged. 12 of them were overturned. So he got 12 of his 13 calls wrong.
Because he had 13 out of 17. So that now they're starting to keep tabs on umpires because of electronics. They can do all that.
Absolutely. Yep.
See how they do.
Yep.
It's
but getting rid of Angel would go a long way, but we don't think that's ever going to happen.
So I think you're going to see in the next year or two a lot of changes in umpiring, and not only umpiring, but how they handle electronics.
And I think it's for the better.
Like it or not, we are into an electronic age of sports.
Yes, we are. And the more baseball seems archaic, the harder it is to get a younger audience. So
our time's running down, but I have to say that we apologize for our comments last show saying that there's no way that we're going to ever hire Veritek or Cora back to run this team. They have.
And look what happened. Alex Cora is back. So
I'm not crazy about it myself. I think he cheated. He cheated probably with the Red Sox a little bit in that. And he's going to carry that around with him.
Yes, he does.
And every time those Sox play anywhere else, it's going to be like the onus that the Patriots
absolutely
had. Carried on. You guys cheat. That's why you win.
True or not, that's what people are going to hear. Sure.
So we'll see.
But yeah, we retract our statement about Alex Cora last month.
So in any case, folks, it's finished our 6th season up here. We are planning a special winter show.
Yes, we are.
And this will be sometime during the snowfall.
After the holidays.
We're going to do a show where we pick our top 5 baseball movies, top 5 baseball books, and top 5 baseball songs.
Yes, there are songs out there.
A lot of good songs out there.
There are.
But then, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
It's always great to hear from anybody in the street that's seen the show.
It's starting to happen.
The fact that we've been able to do this continuously now for 5 years, 6 years, has been special.
Thanks for watching.
And special, I have to thank Joe McLaughlin and Debbie Lincoln for being our ladies behind the scenes.
Yes.
They're the real heroes.
Couldn't do it without you.
That's right.
So
50 years.
50 years.
So we'll see you all in on.
Take care.
And hope baseball is better and the country is all better off health-wise next year.
We'll see you next year.
Thank you for watching another outstanding program provided to you by Lunenburg Public Access. We're here to serve the community. Lunenburg Public Access is always looking for volunteers to help record town events, high school sports, and town meetings. Please consider helping us out today. To contact us, you can call 617-763-3018 or email us at lunenburgaccess@gmail.com.